The show Heels follows the Duffy Wrestling League, or more specifically, the Spade family. You've got Jack Spade, who is running everything, including being the head writer, and the champion, who is a heel/bad guy. His brother Ace is the main babyface, aka the main good guy. The Duffy Wrestling League is run out of Duffy, Georgia, a small, rundown town with not a lot going on. And the DWL is seen as a regional promotion, but it's definitely seen better days. The DWL was formed by Jack and Ace's father, Tom, who is known as King Spade, but King Spade unfortunately killed himself and left his business to Jack and also his business partner, Willie. Their latest card sees Jack beat a guy named Big Jim to regain his championship. But as Jack is ripping the crowd, in comes Ace to save the day, kick Jack out of the ring, challenge him to a fight. They agree that next week's match will be for the championship and it'll be the headliner. But as Jack is walking away, Ace says, "Hey Jack, fuck you." And there's a massive pop from the crowd, but Jack is not happy at all. When Ace gets to the backstage, he tells him, "Dude, there are kids here." But all Ace cares about is the reaction he got from the crowd, which was pretty big. They loved it. Fast forward to the next week, Jack has to start worrying about the match. He needs to write it all down. But his wife Stacy comes in and wants to know when he's going to be heading to church with them. This morphs into a little bit of a squabble about the latest purchase by Jack, smoke machines. Stacy's a stay-at-home mom, and she penny pinches everything, trying to stretch their dollar as far as it can go. Well, with Jack buying such things as smoke machines, she feels like she can't win in this battle to keep a roof over their head. Jack, however, views it as the DWL needs it, and if the DWL needs it, we need it. The group then does head off to church. They meet up with Jack's mom, and even Ace makes an appearance. But in wrestling, they have something called Kayfaybe, meaning that if you're out in the public, you have to act like your gimmick is real. And because of that, Jack doesn't want to be seen in the same place as his brother because in the ring, they're supposed to be enemies. So after church is done, Jack goes and waits in the car. Ace's mom, Big Jim, and his pregnant wife, Melanie. They start discussing kayfabe, and Melanie doesn't really understand it. She even goes as far as to use the F word, fake, because wrestling isn't fake, it's scripted. But even after explaining it, Melanie just thinks it's all pretty ridiculous because the crowd knows that it's scripted, so why do you have to pretend outside that you guys really hate each other? But that's the business. After church, though, they have to head over to the DWL arena. And in reality, it's just a really run-down barn. All the wrestlers that will be performing on the card there tonight are there already. You've got Apocalypse, Diego Cottonmouth, Rooster Robbins, and Bobby Pins. And one of the valets named Crystal is watching from above. Rooster starts complaining that he's torn every ligament in his knee and he still thinks he's the best wrestler, so why is Ace in the main event? Apocalypse reminds him that quitting is always an option, but Rooster says, "I can't quit, you guys need me." He starts practicing some moves with Bobby, and Bobby's pretty new to the business. So when Rooster says, "All right, get to the top rope and do an elbow drop on me, I'll teach you how to sell it," Bobby does it, but he's kind of scared. He ends up executing the elbow drop, but Rooster sells it all right. He really sells it. And that's because Rooster's really hurt. Bobby didn't execute the move correctly, which Crystal yells up from the rafters. You need to shift your weight to your knee and not your elbow. As the openers and mid-card guys start practicing, Jack shows up and Willie walks up and asks if he's finished the script or not. She happens to think that Ace should win because of the fact that that's why they have a packed house there tonight. But Jack hasn't finished the script and he's not so sure about that. They also have an issue of a rival promotion named Florida Wrestling Dystopia. Their owner, Charlie Gully, has been crapping all over them in videos, going so far as to say that you'll have free admission if you vow to never go to a DWL event again. Jack tries to put it to the side like it's nothing, but Willie reminds him that they're packing out places all over North Florida, so there is a reason to be concerned. And a packed house is something they could actually use a lot because they have issues all over the place. They don't pay their wrestlers that well. The roof needs fixing. Willie's also very concerned that after tonight, they might have a problem getting people back because they've been building up to Ace versus Jack for a long time. Jack, however, points out that his latest match against Big Jim has over 10,000 views online. Because of this, he tells her, "We've got heat. Heat that the DWL hasn't had since Dad versus Wild Bill. But what we really need to do is upgrade our cameras," which Willie knows that Stacy is not going to approve of. But once again, what's good for DWL is good for Stacy, or so Jack convinces himself. Now, the last two guys to show up for practice are Ace and Big Jim. Big Jim gave Ace a ride over to the DWL barn, but right before they got there, they stopped off at a convenience store, and Ace said some pretty nasty stuff to the girl behind the counter. This is one of those towns where everybody knows everybody, so when she said something about Ace's dad being disappointed in him because he was caught stealing gum, he decided to make fun of her weight. Pretty mean. She told her dad called up Jack, and now Jack has to deal with the fact that his brother, who's supposed to be the good guy, is out there making people cry. As Ace and Big Jim get there, Jack is in the ring going over the outcomes of that night's card. But when he gets to the main event, he says that he will retain the title by pinfall, which surprises pretty much everybody. They figured that it was going to be Ace's night, including Ace. As soon as everybody goes their separate ways, Ace runs after Jack and demands to know why he's not getting the belt. Jack explains that Charlie Gully's Florida Dystopia Wrestling is breathing down their neck, so he's got to keep the fan base interested and engaged. The way to do that is to do the unexpected. Everybody's expecting Ace to win, so what they do is they have Jack win. This way, it'll force Ace to fight his way back to the title picture. But more importantly, it'll keep the fans engaged for a month, maybe 2. Jack starts waxing poetic about the story that he's telling the audience, but Ace screams at him that it's grown men in costumes pretending to hit each other. It's supposed to be fun, but Jack says not at the expense of being good. Jack then brings up the whole making a girl cry fiasco before practice, and once again hammers home that people need to believe he's a good guy. The problem is, Ace already believes he's a good guy. Ace heads back to the locker room, and he's standing in front of his locker pissed off when his valet, Crystal, walks in. She tries to make him feel better by reminding him it's just a belt, and then starts going over the finish. Ace, though, can't believe that he's really not going to be named champion. In another effort to make him feel better, Crystal says, I've been watching matches here since I was little, and sometimes losing is the best way to win over a crowd. She brings up that when Ace was in high school, he was the star quarterback who threw an interception in overtime to lose the championship. When Ace did that, he was on the field, he was crying, and there was something about seeing him vulnerable on the field that made Crystal feel for Ace in that time. But there's another thing that Ace can do to make Crystal feel for him. Hook up with him. The two start banging it out in the locker room. A couple hours later, Jack comes back to the barn, and Willie tells him, hey, we got a visitor. And that's because an old DWL legend, Wild Bill, has returned. He's a guy who made it out of Duffy and actually made it to the big time. Now he works as a talent scout for one of those big-time promotions. When Jack gets alone with him in his office, Bill tells him that he's not there to just think about the good old days. He's there because of Ace. Powers that be think that he really could be something. Jack says to Bill he's a kid, and he hasn't even mastered this level yet. But Bill cuts him off and says, yeah, but the way that this kid pops in the crowd, he's a natural. I've seen those videos you put out. Jack kind of chuckles to himself and says he's not going to leave what we're building here, but Bill tells him, I left, and then I came back here this morning on a Learjet. I mean, after all, what are you even trying to resurrect here anyway? Jack starts telling Bill how he's going to resurrect the DWL. People are already responding to what he's doing. And Bill reminds him that a couple weeks ago they did a show at the Golden Corral Buffet. And this is the problem with their relationship. Jack looks at Bill like a guy who got out but never came back to help out. And Bill looks at Jack like a guy who is simply delusional. Bill walks out of the office and finds Ace and lets him know that they are indeed scouting him. But before that night's show, Ace wants to go over the finish with Jack. He wants to see if he can maybe salvage it. Him and Crystal have come up with a really good idea where Ace continues to drop kick him over and over and Jack continues to kick out. Until eventually, it's just one super kick too many and he has to give up the belt. Jack, though, is totally turned off by this idea when he finds out that it was Crystal who actually came up with it. He looks at her like nothing more than a valet, which is a trend in the DWL. He looks at Willie, who says, I don't hate the idea. But then he asks Big Jim what he thinks, and Big Jim says, it just feels like this is the end of something. And that's because in Ace's mind, it is. He admits, yeah, I mean, if Bill likes what he sees, I'm going to be out of here. But Jack tells him that the finish will remain the same, and if he wants a title belt, he's going to have to stick around and earn it, like everybody else has. Ace storms out of the barn and is standing outside with Crystal, and Billy rolls up and asks if he can speak to Ace alone. They drive off to have a private conversation, and Ace is asking Bill if there's anything specific that they're looking for so he can get signed. But it's the same stuff that got them to look at Ace in the first place, being that superstar. Bill then pops an Oxycontin and throws it to Ace, and Ace doesn't really want to take it because it always messes him up, but Bill reminds him, yeah man, that's the point. So Ace puts the pills in his pocket for later. Bill then asks what's the deal with Crystal, and Ace tells him that she's the valet, and Bill responds with, we can get you a hotter one, definitely a taller one for sure. The conversation then gets to Jack, and Bill says that Jack is a know-it-all who doesn't know anything. If Jack was half as smart as he thinks, he would realize that it's not about sticking to rigid scripts, it's about being adaptable. Bill then hands Ace a 2x4, which he carved the words, long live the king into it. It's an old staple from Ace's father. He then tells him, baby brother's in charge now. Now, while these two are talking, Jack is going off to find Big Jim, and he finds him at the very top of a water tower. He starts pitching Jim on a finish where Jim is going to run in and turn heel. It's going to be like a double cross. But the thing is, Jim doesn't want to turn heel. He doesn't like the idea of people booing him. Jack tries to convince him that it's the right move to do and tells him that eventually he'll turn back. But Jim turns to him and says, Jack, I'm retiring. Melanie's pregnant and she doesn't get what we do. Plus, if I'm not wrestling, I can pick up more shifts and maybe one day I can be a manager. If you really want me to turn heel tonight, I'll do it, but tonight's my final show. And Jack says, no, it's fine. But now he's got an issue because he's about to be down two of his most popular wrestlers, Ace and Big Jim. He gets down from the water tower and heads back into his office, where Ace comes in and makes one final pitch for him to win the belt. But Jack is still hung up on the fact that Crystal came up with this finish, even though it's really good. Ace kind of throws his hands up and says, I just want my picture on the wall of champions right next to you and Dad. And Jack says, well, then why are you leaving? But Ace shoots back, who won it? I mean, why can't you just be happy for me? They get into a whole argument about whether or not Jack's happy for him or whether he's just trying to keep his baby brother under his thumb. Ace feels like Jack's being bitter. Jack feels like his brother is leaving before they finish what they started. It then morphs into what the crowd of autograph seekers outside is cheering for. Are they cheering for the character or are they cheering for Ace? Jack feeling like he created that character, Ace feeling like he perfected the character. This conversation, though, is getting nowhere, so Ace just leaves and goes to sign autographs with his fans. Shortly after the autograph signing, though, it's time to actually get dressed. Crystal, who's a valet, ends up sneaking into the locker room, where Willie ends up catching her and yelling at her for it, saying, you're a valet, you're not a wrestler. But Crystal says, no, I'm more than a valet, I am a wrestler. And this has been a common trend, with Willie and Jack trying to keep Crystal in her lane, and Crystal wanting to branch out. Crystal, though, has a lot to think about, because she's about to be a valet for a guy who might skip town, and she doesn't know if she's coming with. And that guy, being Ace, is outside in the parking lot snorting an oxy when Bill walks up to him and hands him the 2x4 and says, long live the king. It's then showtime. Everybody goes out, has their matches, gets the crowd riled up for the main event. But before Jack goes out, Stacy walks up to him because Jack made some more purchases she doesn't agree with. This time, a bunch of GoPro cameras. And for the 100th time, he says, well, if it's good for the DWL, it's good for you. But Jack Spade isn't the only person having a conversation with the female in his life, because as Ace is waiting by the curtain, Crystal finally asks the question, are you taking me when you leave? But Ace doesn't answer the question, and the two are interrupted when Jack walks up. As they're standing there waiting to go out, Ace tells Jack, I'm going to go wrestle the match of my life, and just like you said, I get to leave and you stay here forever. So you end up killing yourself just like Dad did. And both guys start choking each other. Apocalypse comes and breaks it up, and Big Jim comes to the curtain and gives everybody a hug. He has no idea that these two are about to come to blows. But then Jack's music hits. He goes out to the ring, and then it's Ace's turn. He goes out with the 2x4. The crowd is riled up. The whole backstage ends up coming to the curtain to watch it. They feel like this match is about to be epic. There's a true energy in the room as Bill is up in the rafters watching it. But shortly after the bell rings, Jack ambushes Ace, suplexes him, and puts him in a hold where he's got his one arm pinned to the ground and he's wrenching on his shoulder. The ref actually tells Jack, you're going to end up legitimately hurting Ace. And Jack says, well, then I guess you're going to have to call it. Ace is writhing in pain, and finally the ref does end up calling the bell. And everybody in the barn is just shocked at what they just paid for. When Ace finally gets up, he realized what Jack just did. He kept Ace from being able to show off what he could do in the ring for Bill, thus keeping him in Duffy. And he punches him in the face. The fans, meanwhile, are pissed off that they just wasted money on this, and they start pelting both guys with popcorn, sodas, beers. It's a really bad look for the DWL. But it looks like Jack's going to get his way, because he keeps the belt and he keeps his brother in town. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought this sucked. Make sure to be nice in the comment section. If you don't see the next video up in the end screen there, I'll get it up in a few days, not to worry. And I have merchandise, so go buy a mug or something. It's never too early to think about Christmas gifts, folks. Once again, thank you for checking out this recap.